Welcome to the Soul Mirror, where we uncover the reflections that shape our growth. I'm your host, Shreya, and today's guest, Veronique Orybreaks, is an intuitive movement and mindful awareness guide whose work blends storytelling, yoga, and creative intention. Her teachings remind us that every moment and every person can become a mirror for expansion, healing, and light. So, welcome, Veronique. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Oh, thank you so much, Shreya. I'm honored to be here.
And Veronique, your topic, how we connect to the mirrors that expand us, is both poetic and profound. So, what does that phrase personally mean to you?
Yes, it's so important to recognize that we are mostly water. We're very sponge-like in our ability to pick up the energy that's around us. And so one of my favorite advices to give to both young people and really at any age, but particularly in those early year imprintings, is that our friend circle, our family circle, our chosen mentor circle are souls and people that feel like they are igniting a certain aspect of ourselves that is showing us an aspect of what we would like to become. So, for example, if we have people in our lives that are depleting, maybe there's some addictions going on, if, people are always struggling financially, we tend to get pulled into that kind of energy versus, right, if we're surrounding ourselves with people who feel very abundant, very free. Maybe they're, learning pottery this week, or they're, taking up guitar lessons or whatever is going on. Then we feel encouraged, like, oh, I always wanted to learn violin actually, and it's never too late to learn. And because my friend is doing this, it is showing me that I can do that also. And so we can see that as a mirror of what our potential is. And we could also see that as a reflecting of shadow, right? So we could think of someone who we admire, and what's really powerful is we each have each of those categories within us. And then we could look at someone who we have like a very judgmental, maybe oppositional viewpoint to that person. And we have certain aspects of those shadow personality traits within us also, right, to different degrees. And so why I think it's so important that we surround ourselves with mirrors that are uplifting is because then we can start to really cultivate this circle, this what I really think of as chosen family, that we're all uplifting one another. We're all elevating one another. And we can show those mirrors of where our growth edges are, maybe things that we don't readily see within ourselves, and how that can bounce off of one another so that ultimately we're all on that growth journey indefinitely.
Yes, and that's so powerful that our reflections truly shape our becoming. It's really a very powerful thing. And was there a moment in your own life when someone became such a mirror for your growth?
Oh gosh. So many moments like that. I think it's so good to embrace the cosmic giggle in moments, because usually in the growth, I feel like what we have to remember is there needs to be friction in order to have growth. This is why there's so much talk these days about creating good stress, because we need there to be something to bounce off of in order to transcend this next level of iteration of ourselves, or this next level of growth within ourselves. And usually that doesn't happen in the comfort zone, right? Like if everything is going well and we're not taking risks and we might actually feel like, oh, like life is easy. I'm in a good season of my life. Maybe there's something that just feels like there's a comfort, and it's sneaky because comfort can be disguised as like, oh, everything is going well. But what we really want to uphold, I think, for your listeners, which I think they're here because they want to be on this journey of growth, is we actually want to seek for moments when we're triggered, when we're being shown something that's initiating something within us that actually feels directly uncomfortable, and to have a sense of humor when that happens, because it's like, oh great, I have this other opportunity to practice how I'm choosing to respond to this, and what this person is mirroring to me is like igniting something inside of me that needs to come through, because no emotion on its own necessarily is good or bad, but it's really about how it's metabolized or how it's expressed that then gets categorized as good or bad, right? So it's like, if I'm in a relationship with someone, and many relationship experts will talk about this, if you're not fighting, and I'm not talking about like explosive like arguments, but if you're not coming into any moments where you're in disagreement with one another or you're challenging each other's beliefs, it said you're not going deep enough, right? Like there's this like misconception that, oh, if you're not in arguments and everything is very peaceful all the time, then you're in a healthy relationship. But actually, you want to be in a healthy amount of challenging what your beliefs are, because as we grow, as we evolve, we really want to challenge, like, is this my opinion, or is this truth, or is this like a former way of how I used to think about things, but how do I actually relate to this in the here and the now? And I've definitely had many opportunities to practice that. And it's only can you really laugh at it in retrospect, because in the moment it can be really, really charged with feeling like you have to be in defense mode. But I think oftentimes we're only in defense mode when we're not in our authenticity, right? So if someone came and challenged you on something that in your heart of hearts that you are confident in, you're skilled in, and they were combating with you on that, you would really calmly say, oh, that's actually not true. But if there's any part of you that has doubt about it, that's when you get into defense mode. And so I think those are moments to like really recognize, like, okay, like where are the parts that feel like they need more strengthening, and really like looking at those as opportunities of, okay, this is showing up so that I can strengthen, versus going into a spiral and a story around how that person is causing you grief, because really it's never about the other person. It's just that they're showing you something about yourself that you're still wrestling with. And the more you can be in play with that, I think the clearer the path starts to become, and so much liberation around these things.
Yes. And I think that's such a powerful image, how like our reflections are not just seen but felt, and guiding us into deeper awareness of who we are becoming. And also, like, you intertwine movement and storytelling in your practice. How does physical expression help people connect more authentically with their inner reflection?
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, the movement practice is so therapeutic. And, anyone who has had moments where they couldn't move and then were able to move again, you really recognize like, oh, wow, it is such a gift to be able to move the body. It's definitely not a given. Not everybody has that ability to do that. And so for everyone, I really recommend somatic release because, like I was saying before, of how emotions, it's so wild. There's such a common retraction that happens when there's an emotion that we perceive to be uncomfortable. We like grip onto it, which is actually counterintuitive. You would think that we would want it to pass through, but we tend to, like, in the disruption of, oh, this person is disturbing my peace, or this person did this thing or said this thing, and then we not only do we grip onto it, but then we were in that telling of the story, and then anyone that we can find, we're like retelling the story. Sometimes this happens, not everyone does this, but a lot of people do this. And so what the movement practice allows is permission to let the story go, permission to let the emotion go, and have a place to really metabolize the things that feel really aggravating, or they feel like a dis-ease in the body, and give that permission to go. So I'll give an example. So the other day I was teaching a class, and I really love to, at the beginning of the class, ask, what are you craving? And so sometimes that could be a shape. It could be an area of the body. Oftentimes people, they want hips, they want back, shoulders. There's certain areas of the body that are common. And so in this particular class, I had one woman ask for hips and back, and then I had another woman ask for practicing crow pose. And so I designed this sequence for them. And when we were on our backs, before we came up to seated, one of my favorite things to do is to lay down on the back, put your legs and your arms in the air, like dead bug pose, and just shake the arms and the legs as fast and as quickly as possible. And you can almost have that vision of a bug on its back, like fighting for its life, like trying to flip over. And so as you're on your back, you can do this, if you're, somewhere where you can lay down on the ground. I invite you to do this if you're listening, to just shake your arms and your legs as fast as you can. And it's like you're trying to like flick off your hands and your feet and your fingers and your toes. And you do it really vigorously. And there'll be like a moment of fatigue where it feels like the body wants to stop. And so the vision that I invited people into, it's like you're a toddler and you're 2 years old and you want the thing, and you're just like, like you can even like scream if you want to, just to give permission for the things that are stuck to like actually release. And then after that, then you let your arms and your legs linger up in the air. And I give the image of, imagine yourself on the moon. So you're still on your back, your arms and your legs are in the air, and you're on the moon. And so your arms and your legs are all of a sudden weightless. And you feel this really tremendous buzzing from all that shaking, like through your fingers, through your arms, through your whole body. And with your eyes closed, there's like this like tremendous sense of peace that just like washes over you. And it's such a powerful reminder that when you actually decide to let that go, then you're free, you're liberated.
Yes. And it's very beautifully said that the body often knows before the mind does. And you just like say that so beautifully. And do you find that movement sometimes reveals the truth that words cannot do alone?
Yeah, absolutely. I think about that with movement and with music, this thing that crosses through all the different languages. It removes the barrier between backgrounds and cultures, what you believe in, because ultimately we were all born into this life to love and be loved. We all seek safety. We all seek belonging. And so when we can connect to the things that unify us, when we can connect to the breath and like just really remember coming back to our oneness, it's so deeply healing and peaceful.
That's so true. And also your book, Shine On and Off, the mat, beautifully merges yoga, mindfulness, and creativity. What inspired you to create such an interactive experience?
Yeah, thank you for that. I love storytelling. I come from a long line of storytellers, and my grandfather was a phenomenal storyteller. He was known for, at the grocery store to launch into a story at the checkout. And I love connecting a reason why we're moving. And so when I would teach classes before COVID, I would often structure my week's classes. So I had 17 group classes a week during that time. And so I would have one theme for the whole week, and I would play with the movement and the style depending on where and who, and it would be under that umbrella of a theme. And it might be a story of something that I felt was happening in my life, but oftentimes it would connect universally. So, for example, the first theme in my book is let go, which, certainly was very apt when I wrote that entry because it was the first week of COVID. And so it was like letting go of control, letting go of schedule. I mean, there's a lot of things that we were letting go during that time, right? And then fast forward to 5 years later, almost 6 years later, and depending on when you're listening to this, there's still things that we're letting go of, right? There's multiple things that we could be letting go of for the rest of our lives. And so what I find to be so beautiful about connecting a theme is we can look at how this affects us individually. So each person thinking that, and then also how that affects us, how it affects us as a collective. So that as we all continue to wake up, to even have the thought to be in that process is actually tremendous. A lot of people aren't actively thinking about these things, And so to even just be in listening to this conversation is really huge because it's provoking this idea of like, oh, what do I want to let go of? And sometimes it's, the physical stuff. We talk about how clutter can feel like static or like a distraction in your space. It could be a relationship that in your heart of hearts that you're ready to let go of. Maybe you want to shift career, you want to let go of your home, whatever the context is. But there's usually something that feels very clear, like, I'm ready to let go of this. Maybe not today, but I'm in the process of thinking about it. And when you're in the process of thinking about it, you're setting it into action. And so you're not forcing something. You're not, pulling the plug, ripping the Band-Aid, however you want to say it, for the sake of, letting go, like, check mark. I did the letting go practice next. But when you can do so with kindness, thoughtfully, compassionately, being in the practice to honor yourself of where you are in your season of life, then we can start to be in that conversation of, what are the other aspects that you want to explore. And so I had been hearing from my students that they love my stories and had asked if I ever thought about writing them down. And so I had started to write them down actually 7 weeks before everything shut down for COVID. And I thought this would be a personal memoir. I didn't think that I would publish the book or anything like that. However, when everything shut down and almost all of my classes went away because all of the studios closed, much like, everywhere in the world, many businesses closed. And so I thought, this is actually a really strong opening, right? Like when things happen that are out of our control, where the optics are, of course, this is horrible. And also, how can we be in the conversation of ingenuity, right? How can we be in what is actually happening and use the technology that we have where we can still remain connected? Because as human beings, we need connection. It's actually necessary. So that's when I thought, okay, this interactive piece of connecting the stories with guided practices, no matter where we are, if we have to isolate. But then it's definitely stayed over all of these years because we travel, or maybe we happen to live in a place where we don't have a studio nearby, or maybe we're in a season where we're taking care of older parents or young kids, where it's not practical to leave, or maybe we're in a season where we're working so much that we really only have 20 minutes on our lunch break. And so I created 20-minute practices that can really easily be woven into anyone's rhythm, whether you're doing it in bed, right before you wake up, and then you ease into your day that way. And I on purpose wanted to have varied styles of practice. So I have a guided meditation, which, certainly you could find seated in a traditional meditation seat, or I really invite, you could be listening to the meditation while you're washing the dishes or walking the dog, or, you know what I mean? That it can be woven into, maybe it's as you're on your morning commute. And then the second part of the practice is a vinyasa flow. So it's movement with breath. Certainly you can do it inside if you live in a climate where it's too hot or too cold. Maybe you stay inside. But if it's a nice day, I always welcome take it outside. Go to a park, go to the beach, wherever you live, be amongst nature and be in movement in nature. It's so powerful. And then the third part of the practice is a yin stretch practice. So that's laying down or seated. It's very restorative, where we seek to feel, certainly. And it's also really great if you're mending an injury, if you're postpartum, if you have difficulty like getting up and down. This is like a really great way to be in the movement stretch practice that is really accessible to most people. And so each of these practices are just 20 minutes. You can do all three in a row under that theme for a 60-minute practice, or you can choose the theme that resonates for you, choose the style that resonates for you, and weave it into your daily rhythm in that way. And so right away I thought, oh, this is a really beautiful framework for people, where you can travel through these universal themes throughout the year. And then you can come back and then you can see, because I have a journal prompt for every entry, you can see what you wrote on this day 1 year ago, and then tomorrow, 1 year ago. So you could really see in real time, because sometimes when we're with ourselves, well, I mean, for most of us, we're with ourselves every day. It's hard to really track our progress.
Yes.
But when we have a journal to reference of like, oh, wow, on this day a year ago, I was practicing letting go of, whatever the habit was. And then you could have an honest check-in with yourself, like, oh, I've actually made tremendous progress with that. And so it really helps affirm that when you show up consistently, you really do make powerful shifts in your lives. And that's what I really want to gift for each person, is that you feel like you have the availability to be in this practice for all of the days, and it can look varied ways each day. It doesn't have to be a formal practice on the mat, hence shine on and off the mat. Really, a lot of it is, blurring the line from where the mat starts and where it ends, because ultimately the mindfulness, it's all yoga.
True. I absolutely agree. And I think that integration of practice and presence really transforms yoga from routine to ritual. And this is a wonderful conversation with you. And if after this my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Yes, I'd love to connect. You can see all of my offerings on my website, yogawithveronique.com. I'm on Instagram at Veronique Ory, and feel free to message me there if you have any questions about my offerings, my retreats, my book, my Shine membership. I have 7 days free for your listeners to come in and try the practice and see if it resonates, and would love to be in the conversation and the connection with everyone.
Yes, and I will definitely make sure to attach all these details and links below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you. And Veronique, thanks you for reminding us that every reflection on the mat and beyond is an invitation to expand. And to our listeners, may you continue to meet your own mirrors with curiosity, compassion, and courage, and keep shining on and off the mat. Thank you.